This is 3-5's homework assignment in the textbook. We're on page 152. We're going to be working on solving equations that involve some simplifying, whether it's distributing or combining like terms, not just a straightforward two-step equation. So number one, 3r plus r equals 8. If you look at the left side of this equation, there's some simplifying that can be done. The main thing that we want to make sure we understand is that we're not going to combine like terms across the equal sign. So you look at the left side as an expression and the right side as an expression. If there's things that can be simplified, again, either combining like terms or distributing to eliminate parentheses, we're going to do that. And then we're just going to have a standard two-step or even a one-step equation once we're done. So on number one, I'm going to simplify the left side of the equal sign. 3r plus r is a 4r. And now I just have a one-step equation. 4 times something is 8. It's obviously 2. We show our work algebraically by undoing the multiplication. So 4 times r, I divide by 4, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. Number 2. Again, staying on one side of the equal sign and simplifying, the left side has 3 terms, 2x, 3x, minus 7, or negative 7. Those are your 3 terms. 2 of them can be put together because they have the same variables. So 2x and 3x makes 5x minus 7 equals 23. And now we have a standard two-step equation. So you're going to attack the number that is not attached to the variable first. Since it's a minus 7 and I want to get it to 0, I'm going to add 7. And so 5x equals 30. This says 5 times some number equals 30. We know it's 6, but we're not always going to know that number. It's not easy math here. So how do we undo multiplication? We divide. Any number divided by itself is 1, so I end up with a 1x, which is just x. And 30 divided by 5 is 6. Final answer. Okay, on number 3, we now have the parentheses, and we're going to have to distribute. So again, left side is just a number. It's fully simplified. The right side, we want to get rid of parentheses before we do anything else. I'm going to bring down the left side. 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 2 is 6. At this point, we have a standard two-step equation. We're trying to get x by itself. It's on the right side, so we're going to eliminate all the numbers that are on the right side, starting with the number that is not attached. So since it's a plus 6, I'm going to minus 6 from both sides of the equal sign. That's your dividing line. You can do it once on each side. Plus 6 and minus 6 gets you 0. It goes away. We're left with 3x on the right side, and then 4x minus 6 is 8. And now, as soon as you see these numbers and you know you're dividing, you can see 8 and 3 aren't going to divide nicely. So we'll leave this as a fraction. We're not going to get a nasty decimal. But which one do you divide by? Sometimes there's some confusion there. So we're going to divide by the number we're trying to get rid of. We just want this to say x equals my answer. So I need this 3 to go away. Right now it says 3 times x. If I divide this by 3, 3 divided by 3 is a 1x, just what I want. So if I'm going to start doing any kind of calculations, any kind of arithmetic, I have to do it on both sides of the equation. And so since I divided by 3 here, to get it down to an x, I have to divide by 3 here. Now if you try 8 divided by 3, you get a repeated decimal, and we're not going to round this and call it 2.6 or 2.6 repeated or 2.7. Okay, we don't want to round this answer. So we're just going to leave it as a fraction, which is just 8/3. Number 4. Very similar. Right side is fully simplified. Left side has some work to do. So we're going to go ahead and simplify the left side first and then start solving the equation. So I'm going to get an 8x and I'm going to get a negative 18. Now I've got a two-step. Nothing else can be combined. Nothing else can be simplified. Now just solve the equation. Get x by itself. So add 18 to clear that out. Now it says 8 times something. 16, we know it's 2. We show the work by dividing by 8. 8 divided by 8 is a 1x, and 16 divided by 8 is 2. Also notice it didn't ask you to do a check. You could take your answer and plug it back in. 4 times 2 minus 1 times 2. Make sure that it gets this answer. You might say, well, if it didn't ask me to do a check, why would I do a check? But on the test or the quiz, if you do a check and it works, you know you got the answer right. So this is one of those tests where when you hand it in, you shouldn't say, I think I did good, or I hope I did good. You should know, because you can do a check. Plug in 2, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 9 is -1. -1 times 2 is -2. That's what we want. -2 equals -2. So I know without a doubt that's the correct answer because I just quickly did a check. Even if it's just in your head, do a check on the quiz, on the test, and you know if you got your answer correct. Okay, number 5. Slowly just adding a little bit each time. Left side's done. Right side has some simplifying to do. So I'm going to get a 2x. 2 times 2 is a 4, and I still have a plus 2. Again, this is not in the parentheses, so don't try and multiply it. It's separate. I still have one more step here to simplify the right side of the equation. I have to combine like terms, the 4 and the 2. They don't have variables, so this 2x stays separate, but the 4 and the 2 combine to make a plus 6. So bring down the left side of the equation. Now it says 9 equals 2x plus 6. I'm going to minus 6. 2x equals 3. You see we're going to divide, and it's not going to work out nicely, so we'll leave this as a fraction. Divide by 2 to clear it out on both sides. You're left with a 1x after 2 divided by 2. And 3 over 2, if you divide it, you could put it as a decimal. 3 divided by 2. So if you put 1.5, that's perfectly fine. This is a good decimal answer. This one's not, because we're going to have to round it or write it as a repeated answer, and those are not really usable. So we're going to look at this one where it says 1.5 and say either one's fine. You're going to do 3 over 2. That's good. If you're going to do 1.5, that's good. I'm going to leave it as 3 over 2 because that's what's in the answer key. But again, if you said x equals 1.5, that's correct and perfectly acceptable. Okay, number 6. Right side of this equation, no simplifying to do. Left side, lots of simplifying to do. So I'm going to have to distribute. We spent a lot of time working on these types of problems without the equal sign. Can I simplify it? So now we can solve the equation after we're done simplifying. So -3 times 5 is -15. A negative times a negative is a positive 6y. Combining like terms now. 5y and 6y. That's going to be an 11y and a minus 15. I can't do anything with that. Equals -15. Bring this down. And now I've got a two-step equation. So I can go ahead and solve it the way I know how. I want to get y by itself. So it just says y equals. So start with the minus 15, add 15 to both sides. 11y equals. Now -15 plus 15 is 0. Don't think you did something wrong because you got a 0. It's a number just like 2 or 4. So dividing by 11 now to clear that out. And 0 divided by any number is 0. So the answer here is 0. If you went back and plugged it in and ran the check, you will end up with a -15 on this side equals -15 if you plug in 0. So that is the correct answer. All right, on number 7, just combining like terms on the right, this is a 1t minus a 7t. That's a -6t. So this is a nice little short one. Divide by -6. And t equals -7. Number 8. Left side's got a lot to do. Now this is a minus, and we're going to distribute it as a -1. So 3x stays. It's a -1 times x, which is -x, and a -1 times 4, which is -4. So we got to make sure that the negative goes to both terms inside the parentheses. Now I need to, before I start moving stuff around and trying to solve the equation, this left side can still be simplified. I have two like terms, 3x minus x, that's a 1x. So 3x minus 1x is 2x, minus 4 comes down. Now it's a two-step, so I'm going to add 4. and divide by 2, and x equals 13. So number 9. Okay, left side we got to distribute 2 things. Right side's good to go. So distributing here, 13t plus 13. This is a negative 3 times 2. That's negative 6. Negative 3 times 4. It's negative 12t. Still have a lot of simplifying to do on the left side before I can start solving this equation. Combine your like terms. That's a 13t minus a 12t. So 13 minus 12 is a 1t. And then 13 minus 6 is a positive 7. I don't have to do any division at the end here because it's just a t already. So all I have to do is move this 7 and get it out of here. And I'm left with t equals my answer. And so it is 31. And number 10. Dealing with some fractions now. Okay, now I don't need to worry about this fraction right now. That is on the right side of my equal sign. I need to simplify this whole left side first. And seeing that I'm going to multiply by a half, that's really not going to bother me because when you multiply by a half, you just take half of the number. So I'm going to distribute right here, and I'm going to distribute right here. That will give me 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, and then I'm going to combine like terms. So 6 times a half is 3b. Okay, so when you multiply by half, it just takes half the number. It's like dividing by 2. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. So I get 3b, and then 6 times 3 is 18. 4 times 12 is 48. 4 times negative b is negative 4b. Still equals 5, 6. I'm not ready to even work with this side yet, though. I've still got some simplifying to do. Combine like terms. 3 minus 4 is negative 1, so negative b. And then 18 plus 48, 66. And again, not even worried about the fact that this is a fraction yet. I'm trying to solve this side. I'm going to go ahead and minus the 66 to get it out of here. So I will be left with a negative b, which we're going to have to take care of. We need a positive b here in the end. But when I look at this, I'm going to go ahead and use my fraction button. 5, 6 minus 66 gets me negative 391 over 6. And at this point now, again, I can't leave this as a negative b. I need to get rid of it. So just like if there was a 2 in front, a 2b, I would divide. You can divide here by negative 1. We're dividing this side by negative 1. Now, normally I wouldn't necessarily write a fraction like this because it just looks complicated. But since I know I'm just dividing by negative 1, and all that's going to happen is the sign changes, not a big deal. No need to go crazy here. So negative and a negative makes a positive b, which is what I wanted. Negatives cancel out here to just leave me 391 over 6. Now, if you decided to divide that, okay, not a great decimal there. So we're not going to round it. We're going to leave it as a fraction. But there are some of you that were probably using this type of calculator, so let's go through that. So let's say you were trying to do the 5, 6 minus 66. What you're going to do is you're going to use the ABC button. So 5, hit the ABC button. 6, looks like this. You're going to minus 66. And you get negative 65 and 1/6 instead of this. So this is going to be equivalent to 65 and 1/6. Now, we did a lot of this in middle school, converting improper fractions to mixed numbers. In algebra, though, we don't really use these types of numbers because when I go to multiply with this, or just do any kind of math with this, it's complicated, and I usually have to convert it out. So we leave everything as improper fractions for the most part. But if I divided 391 by 6, 6 should go in 65 times with a little bit left over, with 1/6 left over. So if I do 391 divided by 6, sure enough, goes in 65 times. The decimal represents what's left over. That's the 1/6. Okay, so that was number 10. So next up was 14. So we're going to do a couple geometry problems here, but we're focused on the algebra portion of it. But anytime you're dealing with shapes, it's geometry. So we're mixing a little bit of geometry and algebra here. So on 14, they tell you the perimeter of the rhombus on the right. A rhombus has 4 equal sides. Okay, it's not necessarily a square. It's only a square if it has 90-degree angles. So it's basically a square tilted. Okay, but even if it has 90 degrees, we call it a square, but it's still a rhombus. A rhombus is a 4-sided shape with all equal sides. So the perimeter of the rhombus at the right is 940. So if I add up all the sides, it equals 940. One of the sides is 6y plus 14. When you see these markings, it means that the sides are equal. And they already told you it's a rhombus. And so even if you didn't know what these markings were, you should know what a rhombus is, and that means all the sides are the same. So every side is 6y plus 14. So if I wanted to find the perimeter, I could add that up 4 times. That'll work. But instead of adding something 4 times, I can also just multiply it by 4. So I can write the perimeter as 4 times 6y plus 14. That's going to equal the distance all the way around, which they already told you is 940. So if I added all 4 sides, I get 940, or if I multiply this by 4, I get 940. So there's my equation. And now it just looks like everything we've been doing with 1 through 10. We're going to go ahead and solve it and try and find out what y is. So first thing we have to do is simplify the left side. So that's 24y. And then 4 times 14 is 56. Now we've got a 2-step equation. So let's clear out the 56. We're going to minus 56 on both sides, leaving me 24y. And after I subtract, I get 884. Last step is to divide by 24. And I do not get a nice number here. Okay, so this is a repeated decimal, it goes on forever. You would write this as 36.8, and then the 3 with a line over it for the repeated, which we're not going to do. So we're going to go ahead and leave this as a fraction. So y equals 884 over 24. Now, that's not a simplified fraction, and if you look at the answer key, it's not going to match. But a quick little trick here. If you want to simplify a fraction in a calculator, if you think back to what you would do in middle school, you would figure out what number goes into both of these and divide it and divide it and divide it until you're all the way down. So you could divide by 2, probably 4. But little trick, if you bring up your fraction button on the calculator and you actually put it in, 884 over 24, and just hit equals, it'll simplify it for you. And so this comes out to 221 over 6. Final answer, and that's what you see on your answer key is the 221 over 6. And we're going to leave it just like that. Again, if you had your other calculator and you did 884 divided by 24, you get that nasty decimal, and so you know you're going to want to leave it. And so let's see if the fraction button works the same here. So 884 over 24, it equals, and it does simplify it, but again, this calculator likes to put things into mixed numbers instead of improper fractions. So if I divided 221 by 6, I should get 35 with a little bit left over. And I got 36. So what did we do wrong here? So let's go back. 884 over 24. Oh, I just copied it wrong. Yep, 36 and 5, 6. So that means that 6 goes into 221 36 times. It's a little bit left over, 5 6 left over. So these are equivalent. So if you are using this calculator and you left it as 35 and 5 6, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to necessarily convert it either way. What I don't want, though, is a repeated decimal. So leave these as, we call them exact answers. These are the actual answers. Once you round it, you've technically changed the number, and you've technically changed the answer. So it's not as valid because it's not the same number anymore once you've rounded it. So when you leave it as a fraction, we have the exact answer. And for algebra, that's what we want. Okay, 15. Find the value of w in the hexagon, which is right here. 6 sides in a hexagon. Each side is 8 plus w, and the perimeter is 186. So very similar problem. If you add up all the sides, you get the perimeter. They're all the same. There's 6 of them, so you can write it as 6 times 8 plus w, or you could write out this plus this plus this plus this plus this plus this and simplify. But I'm going to write it like this. And they told you what the perimeter is. It's 186. So each side is 8 plus w. There's 6 of them. If you add them up, you get 186. So 6 times this has to equal that. Go ahead and distribute. So it's 48 plus 6w. We're trying to isolate the w, so we're going to minus 48 on both sides. So 186 minus 48 is 138, and divide that by 6. And we got 23. So w equals 23. Now, 16. Find the value of z in the area of the rectangle. So we talked about perimeter twice here, and you could fall into the trap of just continuing on with perimeter. So first of all, if you were adding up all your sides here, 2 of the sides would be 2z plus 3, and 2 of the sides would be 6. And you have to combine all of that being added up if you were doing perimeter, but we're not. So we're going to find the value of z if the area of the rectangle at the right is 96 square miles. So how do you find the area, not the perimeter, the area of a rectangle? Well, it's base times height, length times width. That's all it is. So it's 6 times this. So what does that look like? It looks exactly like everything we've been doing. So area equals base times height, or sometimes you see it as length times width. Either way, it's these two sides being multiplied together. So 6 times this can be written. Looks like the distributive property is going to be used. And now we know the area is equal to 96. So this times this equals 96. Go ahead and distribute. It's 12z plus 18. I'm going to minus 18. 96 minus 18. So 78 divided by 12 is 6.5. I didn't have to round that. That comes out to a perfect answer. So nothing wrong with that decimal. I don't want you to think that you can't ever leave a decimal answer. Just no repeated decimals or long decimals that we have to round. 6.5 is an exact answer, so we're good with it. All right, and the last couple problems that we're going to take care of here, let's see if I can squeeze them in. Oh, we are going to have to check them, so we're not going to squeeze them all in here. So let's start with 18. How do we deal with a fraction? This is review, in the review section. We're talking about multiplying by the reciprocal to get rid of it. But first things first, if I'm trying to isolate this, I need to minus 9. So I'm left with the 4/7 d. Negative 11 minus 9, that's negative 20. And now you can either divide both sides by 4/7, that will work, or you can multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is 7/4. That's what I'm going to do, but if you wrote this as divided by 4/7 on both sides, perfectly fine. So when you multiply straight across, you're going to get 28 over 28, which is 1d, which is what we want. And then on this side, you're going to do negative 20 times, again, the fraction button is alpha x, 7 on top, 4 on the bottom. It equals, and it's negative 35. So that's the answer. Now, it does ask us to do a check. So let's go ahead and run the check here. Please label your checks. So it's 4/7 times d, which we said is negative 35, plus 9, and that should come out to negative 11 if our answer is right. So we're going to do 4/7, 4 over 7, times negative 35, that's negative 20, plus 9, and negative 20 plus 9 is negative 11. So both sides of the equation come out equal. Our check works, which means I know that this answer is correct. So again, on your test and your quiz, you can run your own check, whether it's required or not, and you know if your answer is right. So it's worth doing on the test or the quiz, and then when you submit it, you know if you've got these right or wrong. All right, two more. Start with number 19. Just dealing with decimals here and a negative on the C. We'll talk about that. So 6.21, 3.4 plus negative C. All right, so we're trying to get C by itself. So first thing to do is get this 3.4 to a 0. Don't worry about the negative here. That's the C. Just worry about this. If I want to get 3.4 to 0, I have to minus 3.4. So I'm still left with a negative C, and then we can't leave our final answer as negative C. We want to know what C is. So we'll deal with that in a second. So it's 6.21 minus 3.4. That's 2.81. And again, just like if this was a 2C or a 4C, you would divide. So this is a negative 1. That's what we're dividing by. And when you do that, nothing changes except the sign. So it's still going to be 2.81. But instead of positive 2.81, when you divide by negative 1, it becomes negative 2.81. And a negative 1 divided by negative 1 is a positive 1. And then our final answer is negative 2.81. So all that happens is the negative basically goes from here to here. All right, we do need to run a check. So going back to the original, 6.21 equals 3.4 plus negative. Now we're putting this in for C, negative 2.81. So I'm plugging in a negative number, and it already has a negative sign in front of it. So it's a negative negative. That's a positive. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead plus a negative negative. Combine those negatives, it's a positive. Really, this is just plus 2.81. Go ahead and combine those, run it through your calculator, and you'll get 6.21. But again, don't just assume that it's right. Punch it in the calculator, make sure you get it. If you don't, then something's wrong and your check didn't work. So either your answer is wrong or you goofed up in your check. You're going to want to check and figure out what's going on. But sure enough, this works. My answer is right. All right, last one. Nice easy fraction like 1/2. Shouldn't be too bad here. So I'm going to minus 4, leaving me my 1/2 t. On this side I get negative 6. So you're either dividing by a half or you're multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1. Now, I don't even need my calculator for this. 2 over 1 is just 2. Any number over 1 is just a whole number. So all I'm doing is multiplying by 2. So this is negative 12. This side cancels out because you get a 2 on the top, a 2 on the bottom. It's just t. So my final answer here is negative 12. So yes, if you divided by 1/2 instead of multiplying by that, you do get the same answer. A lot of people would say, well, 6 divided by 1/2 is 3, right? No, it's not. That would be 6 times 1/2 is 3. When you divide by a fraction, okay, actually you got to flip and multiply, KFC. So dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by 2 over 1. So negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. That's the right answer. One last check to run. 1/2 times negative 12. Now again, multiplying by a half, it actually takes half of the number, not dividing, multiplying by half. So half of negative 12 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Both sides of the equation come out to negative 2. My check works, and I know that negative 12 is the right answer.